All right, we're going to touch on a story now that deals, you might say, with a sort of different facet of anti-Semitism. An event was held last night in Washington, D.C., hosted by the Romanian embassy to the U.S., honoring 3 American Jewish leaders for their efforts in strengthening U.S. Romanian relations and fighting anti-Semitism. Ironically, it came just as Jews in Romania and elsewhere expressing concern over the rise of a far-right politician who has praised Nazi collaborators, and in a presidential campaign that has also drawn in Israeli officials. For more, let's go to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim, in Washington, D.C. Mike, give us the background of this story.
Wow, it comes at a very timely moment in U.S. Romanian relations here, Kalev. Coming up on Sunday, there'll be a runoff for the premiership of Romania. One of the contenders and the front runner right now came up out of nowhere, Colin Georgescu, a far-right politician who has glorified several Romanian fascists who were involved in Jew hatred and anti-Semitism, the murder of Jews as well. So Georgescu right now is the front runner, and this all comes under the banner of what has been decades of progress in U.S. Romanian relations, which was the highlight of Tuesday's ceremony that we attended at the Romanian ambassador to Washington's home, honoring, yes, a trio of American Jewish leaders with the second highest civilian honor that Romania has to offer. Dan Mariaschin from B'rith International, Mark Levin, who's been involved in Soviet and post-Soviet Jewry for decades, were honored, as was Rabbi Andrew Baker of the American Jewish Committee. This relationship has gone back decades, including the building of the Wiesel Commission to appropriately incorporate the history of Romanian anti-Semitism into something that could better Romanian society and finally try to stamp out anti-Semitism. It's also led to NATO accepting Romania, and that was part of the deal for Romania to be accepted into NATO, was to finally accept its history of anti-Semitism and Nazism during World War II and make progress on incorporating Jewish communities into Romania in an appropriate way. We chatted with one of the honorees there, Dan Mariaschin of B'rith International, to get his take on all the progress that's been made that's now up in the air. Here's Dan Mariaschin.
Many of us had lived through the era of the Eastern Bloc, of communism in Eastern Europe, of the Soviet Union, and we knew there was a window, and that window might not be open for a long time. So when that window opened and we were looking for ways to help to ensure the health of these new democracies, it made good sense to say, well, look, NATO is one way of allowing these countries to get firmly anchored in the democratic way and with the West. And I think that not only in the case of Romania, but in the case of other countries as well, the decision by some of the Jewish organizations to become active and to advocate for membership in NATO was the right one, for sure.
That was Dan Mariaschin. He, along with Andrew Baker, helped lobby on Capitol Hill for Romania's ascension into which was, again, a startling development post-Cold War. We also spoke with Mark Levin, mentioned he'd been handling Soviet and post-Soviet Jewry for decades, and that includes in Romania itself before the fall of communism, when Romania was trying to gain most favored nation trade status with the United States. One of the requirements was that they incorporate immigrants properly, and that included Jewish immigrants to Romania. Levin oversaw that process. It eventually led to Romania gaining that status. Levin was honored as well for his decades-long efforts. Let's hear from Mark Levin.
It's a culmination of the work that we've done with successive governments since independence. It's the full integration of Romania into the community of nations. The fact that they are now members of the EU and NATO, and that I hopefully played a small part in the effort to get them to become members of NATO, is very fulfilling. And the fact that the Jewish community of Romania feels so integrated into the larger society, I think speaks volumes to what has happened over the last 30 years.
But Kalev, with all the celebration that was going on Tuesday night, with these awards being distributed and looking back at the decades of progress that was being made, there was also a sense of trepidation, a lot of inhaling among those in attendance, a sense of dread about what might come on Sunday in this election. Rabbi Andrew Baker, who I mentioned was honored on Tuesday and has been involved in these efforts to further U.S. Romanian relations for decades and to finally try to tie up all the loose ends of all the anti-Semitism that had taken place there for decades. He spoke to us as well about that mixed feeling on Tuesday night about celebrating those decades of progress, and yet also about the harm that may come at Sunday's election. Let's hear from Rabbi Andrew Baker.
We happened to gather between the two elections for president, the first round, which brought forward a candidate that makes all of us troubled and nervous, someone who really stands for the very opposite of all these things we've had worked about. I think the government, which will be formed based on the parliamentary elections, will need to be the bulwark to support democracy and Western orientation, even if this man should win the presidency. But we will see if, in fact, that happens.
All right, there's certainly ironic development, unfortunately, given what's happening in Romania, and that to hear the good work those gentlemen have done with a country like Romania, which has that history of anti-Semitism. Mike Wagenheim there in Washington, D.C., thank you for that.